Jackie, and this is my podcast, The Natural Healing Reel. Today, our guest has plenty to share. She is an author, a mental health advocate, a public speaker, and a former psychotherapist who lives with bipolar disease. Her message is strong, and she is spreading her word that her book is called Balancing Act, Writing Through a Bipolar Life. I'm excited to welcome our guest, Kitt O'Malley. Welcome to The Natural Healing Reel.
Thank you, Jackie. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's great to meet you. So let's dive into this. I'm interested in having an education about all of this because it is huge. It's huge what we're going to talk about today. So where did this all begin for you? When did you realize that this was something that you were dealing with in your life? Was this a life thing that you're dealt? Is this something that comes on because of trauma and circumstance, or we're talking about bipolar, mental health, and mental health really in general, right?
Right. It's primarily has to do with the brain, but your environment obviously affects you. So it can trigger something. If you've had trauma in your life, it can make you more susceptible for that part of your brain to be triggered or activated. I started off with having a diagnosis of depression when I was 18 because I was suicidal as a freshman. And I got help through therapy, and then I did therapy throughout my 20s until I was 30. And I was put on, I got so depressed I couldn't get out of bed. And so I went to see a doctor, was put on different medications for antidepressants and with rapid changes in antidepressants. And I ended up manic for a week.
Goodness.
Yeah. And so what was going through my head was simultaneously I was having thoughts of zeros and ones going through my head, which is binary code, but I'm not a computer. I can't read zeros and ones. Christian mystic saints, which I actually have a personal experience, a personal interest in Christian mystic saints, and chaos theory, which is like physics and mathematics. So I had these thoughts simultaneously streaming through my head, but I couldn't comprehend them because they were going through so fast. But I was able to observe it and go, wow, that's interesting. I wish I could record this. So I had this 1 week of having psychosis and not being able to sleep. And a friend of mine called my dad and my priest and said, Kitt needs help now. And so the priest and the seminarian who had bipolar disorder came over right away. And my father flew up and I called the psychiatrist. I got on antipsychotics for 3 days just to nip the psychosis in the bud. It just put a stop to it immediately, and then was stabilized.
One sec. So
you bet.
What's happening? What does psychosis mean? Like, what's happening when you say psychosis? Is that
so a psychosis?
That load of stuff that's coming through? Is that what that means?
Right. So psychosis can mean a different thing. So I was in that was manic. Is that I had different symptoms of mania can be like racing thoughts, spending a whole bunch of money, being hypersexual, thinking you're God, or you know what I mean, things very euphoric, expansive, things like that. That it was psychotic, which is not just manic, but psychotic, was that I was thinking things that were not there. Like, so psychosis involves delusions, which are thoughts or feelings that don't exist, or hallucinations, which are like things that you see, that you sense, that you see or hear. So I was having these thoughts that were, I think it's possible to be psychotic and to have the thoughts, also to have the content of the thoughts still be meaningful. You know, if I was able to, I couldn't comprehend them because they were going by so fast, but I have an interest and passion for all things computer, all things Christian mystic saints, and I was a math geek. So this was something that I had an interest in. I had an interest in theology. Even before that I had this psychosis, I believed that there was some connection between theology, mathematics, and physics, but I just didn't know what it was. You know, I'm not.
You know now?
Nope. I do not know.
With all of the people that I've spoken with, believe that that's totally a thing.
I think it's a thing. But what I simplify it to is that all of those things have to do at their core with love and beauty. And that mathematics is beautiful, that we're looking at creation, and that when you're looking at creation, when you're looking at God's creation, when you're looking at something that's gorgeous and beautiful, that's kind of what ties them all together. But I haven't like delved into exactly what their connection is, but I know that when I was in high school and I learned trigonometry, I was like, wow, this is powerful. There's something about this that's spiritual. I don't know quite what it is, but something about the circle and the triangle and it being just,
Huge.
There's something there that's huge.
Right? Like the sphere and then the triangle, the pyramids, like that. Yeah, those are.
It's been like it's a theme. If you look over like ancient stuff, it's a theme in terms of having spiritual meaning. So, but I'm not sure what exactly the meaning, you know what I mean? I'm not there. I'm not at that level.
Do you listen to, do you know who Greg Braden, like any of these doctors, scientists, do you know who Greg Braden, he would probably be really great for you to listen to.
Okay.
I think that between just probably watching a few of his videos, he has been working with this and the ancient indigenous people, and he's brilliant. And he's talking, he teaches what you're talking about. This is a thing. I think you had a huge download from the universe, and you didn't know what to do with that.
Yeah, it did feel.
That's my intuitive thing, just knowing.
I think no, Jackie, it totally felt like that, and that's why I think that it felt like it was both. Yeah. Something I had to take care of because of my mental, just me personally being able to handle it. But I did feel like I was channeling something.
Yeah. No, I think that you had I think someone was downloading something through you. Because I've watched lots of that stuff, and it's real and it's a thing, even though other people, people who've never had that experience, do that's the woo-woo poo-poo, whatever, but it's not, it's real. That stuff is real. And what I understand is that like numbers are the oldest. That's how, how they break the numerology. It's the numbers are forever. Numbers have been, I think that you've got probably a gift there that you didn't know how to harness still.
Right. Yeah. And it's a gift that can be dangerous. Actually, when I was in my 20s, my grandfather died. And after he died, I was, and I gave the eulogy at his funeral. And as I was coming back, I was driving over the San Francisco Bay Bridge, and I went into a trance state just because it was the nighttime and the lights flashing that I was going through. And I was like, oh no, I'm in a trance state. I have to make sure that I can carefully drive because I couldn't stop. There was no shoulder. I'm on a bridge, right?
And what is a trance state? Like what was that? What was happening?
So what was happening was that I felt like an energy was coming into me and filling me, a very light cleansing energy, and that it was pushing out the energy that was already in me. So I felt like I was being cleansed and purified, and I felt like tingling all over. And when I described it to my friends, because we were into like Buddhism and meditation and stuff like that at that time, and when I explained it to my friends, I said I just had a spiritual orgasm, because that's what it felt like.
That's apparently what that is. I've not had that, but doing the work with Joe Dispenza, that's where they're trying to get you to, doing the breath work and meditation. That's Joe Dispenza. Oh my goodness, he saved my life. If you've not done any of his work, they're doctors. They've proven what they're saying with science, with the thought that creates the feeling, which is what I think that you're like probably a gifted soul that has not been, you don't have any knowledge about what it is that's happening. Is what I'm feeling intuitively.
Well, what's interesting is that what I did was, after that, I was able to just look at a candle and go in and out of trance states.
Okay, people work
But
very hard at this. Like I went to this Joe Dispenza thing. It was a week-long advanced course, and we were in meditation 4 hours. We were doing walking meditations outside for 2 hours in trance, trying to get into trance.
mhm.
Like this is a thing that people work very hard at. And then there's people having these body orgasms, and I'm like, what the heck is happening over there? But this is what they're trying to get to. People are working very hard to have what you're having naturally. Just
Right. Well, I ended
so
up
you know.
stopping because I didn't have anybody to, like a guru or something to go to lead me, because I wasn't just going into those positive places. I was also going into negative places. And at the time
Because
I
your
was,
thoughts were scared. You didn't have the. So Joe says you need to have the knowledge. Sorry to cut you off, but without
no,
the knowledge of what's happening, you have no direction of what's happening and no.
right.
And were you asking, for Chris, like, were you asking Jesus and whomever your spiritual, whom are you talking about when you talk about your Christian?
Well, at that point in time, this in my 20s, this was before I would have considered myself an agnostic then.
Yeah.
And when I described the experiences to my mom, she was into new age stuff back then because it helped her. The meditation helped her with cancer and
Yeah.
the treatments.
Yeah.
So she was really into meditation. And she said, maybe you're a witch, and so I even looked into covens, and I thought, no, you know what, that might not be a safe place, because I don't know the covens, if they're a good coven
Well,
or what, you know what I mean?
they were all burned. So how could you think that it was a good thing? You probably were in your past lives, and they were the ones
I,
really healers, from what I understand. And there were
yeah.
many.
So, I mean, I have nothing against witchcraft at all,
I
or
don't know
Wicca.
much about it. I just have learned because I've heard the witch thing too. And I
Yeah.
think that they were saying that many of us in past lives, if you
Right.
believe, were witches, and what they thought was a witch was us, the women, going and helping heal.
Helping. Yeah. Healers.
Helping
Oh,
heal
definitely.
with
Woman
natural
healers.
things. And so they're whipping up concoctions on the stove with natural plants and then going to heal.
Right.
I'm calling them witches and burning them at the stake, because they were trying to heal people, and who were
Right.
they to have the power to heal? I think
Totally.
was what I've learned.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. Totally. That was
But you
the
hear
case.
witch and it sounds negative and Halloween scary.
Oh,
Black.
no, it wasn't that I thought it was negative. It was just that I thought, okay, I don't know, you
What?
know what. Well, anyway, I'll show you. I'll talk about, first of all, I'll talk about the negative experiences that I went into. The negative experiences I felt, and at the time I was reading C.S. Lewis's Screwtape Letters, and C.S. Lewis is a Christian theologian, and he wrote the Chronicles of Narnia and stuff like that. He's really great, awesome author. So and awesome imagination, So, but in the Screwtape Letters, the devil basically, I read it when a long time ago when I was 21. So basically pretends to be God, right? Like a demon or the devil pretends to be God. So I had these experiences that were very cleansing and grounding. And then I had these experiences that seemed deceptive and like the dark side. And that if they seemed tempting, like come here. And I felt like I could lose my mind if I went too far that direction, that I would lose who I am. It wasn't grounding. It was the opposite of it. And so I stopped doing the trance states. And instead I went to church.
This is wild. This is very wild. And I'm sorry, I just this is amazing, because I've heard about this. I've not had these experiences, but I've heard, and it's like, this is, so when you're cleansing it and they've cleaned you, they say that then the devil wants to go after you because you're light. You're emanating white healing light, and they don't want that. They've got to put all the light workers out or whatever, right? Anybody who's shining bright. So I wonder if, because you didn't have the knowledge, and you weren't asking for covering or protection, probably at that point, because you probably weren't thinking to, that's anyways, that's what have been learning about.
Yeah. Right.
Talk to somebody who's had this kind of an experience. So
yeah. So what I decided is, okay, I don't have anybody that I trust who can help me, lead me through this right now. So since I don't have anybody that I trust to help me with this, what I ended up doing was I ended up going to the Newman Center, which is like the Catholic church for students, I was going to Berkeley at the time, UC Berkeley. And
Right.
so I went and did that. And what was really cool is that the priest there knew Alan Watts, who's like the Buddhist, he was like very, open-minded and very intellectual and so I felt like at home there, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because there was that intellectual openness, and it jived with, very open-minded, spiritual type thing.
Somebody who had some knowledge, some protection, like you probably felt like
Yes.
you had a safe space.
It was safe. Exactly. It felt safe.
Good.
So I felt safe. I still didn't do the trance state stuff, but I felt safe in terms of my spiritual journey at that time. And I do feel like all of the theme, because I have had this theme, and actually I wasn't diagnosed bipolar, even though I had that week of mania. What the psychiatrist thought was that mania, even telling them about these trance experiences, I told them about that, and they didn't think that was mania. So, but that week that I had where, I wasn't able to sleep for a week, they thought that was triggered by the antidepressants in terms of the manic part
They're
of it.
nasty. Those, yeah.
Well, it's not, it depends on how much you take. I mean, I would not be stable if it weren't for medications right
I
now.
had to, you know what, I have been on an antidepressant for a long time. I can't get off of it. Every time I take myself off and I wean, and then it's like an anxiety attack will come back, and it's just wallops me.
Do you wean under the supervision of your doctor? Okay, it's still.
Well, the first couple of times I didn't, because I didn't tell anybody that I had to take it, because I felt like I was a loser, because I was going through, my mom was dying and my marriage was falling apart and blah, 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 right? Just those incredible tough times. And I went to the doctors, and he was like, you know what, just try this, because it's, it can be like a short term, but I think they say that the one that they gave me is like the worst to get off. It's like of course it is, right? Anyway,
but if what you can do is you can do this transition, or do other, talk to your doctor about it. There's a way that you can like go off one and on another that's less harsh.
Yeah.
And then off that maybe.
I think I tried that, and that was weird, because they had a newer, like an updated version of the one that I was taking, and that it was like, I was just weird. Like and one prior to that for the non-smoking. Remember they had those ones where you could take,
Wellbutrin, yeah.
Yeah, I took that.
That's a good one, except for that I became, in terms of sexual side effects, that's better. But when I was on that medication, I felt like I was like a murderer, practically. I mean, I had that rage. It was really rageful. But anyway,
but it affects, it's a drug, right? And so we're masking really what the problem is inside that's bothering us, right?
Well, I'm going to go in.
Oh yeah.
Before I'm going to go to the change. For serious mental illnesses like mine, bipolar disorder or schizophrenia.
Yeah.
I believe that you do whatever helps you live.
I agree.
Your best life.
Agree.
And for many of us, if we didn't take our medication, we'd be in the hospital.
I agree. Totally.
So, but if you are going through something that's situational, you should be able to, and isn't chronic depression or anxiety, but has to do with you going through a time of life, medication might be able to help you in conjunction with psychotherapy. Like,
right.
You know what I mean? Don't just mask it, but
you have to
deal with it too. Deal with it too. But if it's so hard that you need it, it can be in conjunction with psychotherapy. Obviously, I didn't use any medication from the time I was 18 to 30. So I coped for a long time with psychotherapy.
Yeah.
So, and then I've been in psychotherapy on and off since I was 18. I don't always go to psychotherapy. But since I was 30, I was on antidepressants. So they thought, they just got me on a stable, low dose antidepressant that didn't trigger the mania.
Let's talk about mania. Can you explain mania to me? Of course, we've all heard but because this isn't spoken about, people don't talk about this. I don't think anybody really knows.
So mania can be like racing thoughts, pressured speech, like somebody talking really, really fast, behavior that's out of control, like extreme spending or hypersexuality. If somebody all of a sudden is very promiscuous and they're not very promiscuous. So it's a like, if you think of a high, it's an up very up state. Okay. You might feel like euphoric, like you're God, you know what I mean? Or you're being called by God. And actually that's where I eventually got diagnosed, was when I was 39. I was a mom of a 2-year-old, and I started to have euphoric feelings of being called by God to one church for spiritual direction and called by God to another church for Bible study. And even though the behavior was fine and healthy and great, you know what I mean? And even the content was fine, there was something about the feeling, the euphoria, that I recognized as being diagnosed, being bipolar.
Okay.
So
bipolar, so you're feeling really, really high and great, and then does it happen like it's just like wham, you go down?
It doesn't necessarily go wham.
Okay.
No, it can be, but then I also would experience lows. So then it triggers a cycling. It's not necessarily a wham cycling, but your body has to recuperate. And often the way it recuperates is it goes down into, because you can't sustain that high. Your body just can't do that. Your brain and your body just can't do that. So then kind of and then you go low, and the low is lower than most people's low. It's not just sadness, it's you feel it in your whole body, or you feel, extreme, for a period of longer than 2 weeks, you feel, very, very deep sadness, hopelessness, and stuff like that. So that would be the depression part. So bipolar used to be called manic depression, and that sort of it describes the highs and the lows. So when I had this euphoric feeling, it didn't meet the mania level. It met the what they call hypomania, which is sort of mania light, right? So it was just euphoria. I wasn't, the things I was doing were fine. And so I got diagnosed as bipolar 2 at that point, which means sort of less severe bipolar. And they didn't have that diagnosis actually in the diagnostic statistical manual that they use in the United States when I was 30. So this is when I was 39. So this diagnosis, even though it had been in the literature, they didn't treat this level of bipolar with medications until I was 39. So when I was 39, I knew, okay, I'm a mom. I've got to make sure I'm stable for my son. And so I went on medication for bipolar disorder and a mood stabilizer, and continued using the antidepressant, but used a mood stabilizer in addition to it. But I had this internalized stigma, and we kind of talked about this before we went on the air, this horrible feeling inside, the shame, or you did it even on the air too, when you were talking about going through a divorce, and my internalized stigma was, here I was the same person, but my label changed and my medication changed. I was the exact same person, and I thought I'd be a bad mom.
Yes, because it's not talked about, it's not accepted. And that's why these conversations are so important, because you know what, we're all the same. We're all going through something, and we need to know what that is so we can be there and hold a space of love for people, because that's what's missing, right? Like going through all of those things that you went through it all alone. You had no support and no understanding of what was happening with you for all of those years, really, except for a psychotherapist. You had no, like I said, no friend, I think that, so when you're going through these, here's a question. Is there something going on in your life that's creating the euphoria and the thing, or you're just that's just coming out of nowhere?
It can be either. So for me, I'm triggered by social stimulation. If I'm overly socially stimulated, it can trigger hypomania. It can trigger cycling, like some hypomania, like I get overstimulated, and then I have to recuperate from that, and so then I hit a low. like if I do too many podcast interviews, or even if I get too much sun or too little sun, you know what I mean? All these things can affect whether I go high or whether I go low, you know? So yeah, so I'm triggered by a variety of different things. It's not that those cause it, like it's more like I have, my brain and my body are a certain way that I am sensitive to
Yeah. Yeah.
these
Oh, for
triggers.
sure you are. To be able to go into trance like that without ever been practicing. Sorry,
So,
that's just, I mean,
yeah,
it's a thing that people are working very hard at to learn. Just
I know. I do wonder, you know, like about that. Like I don't even go to church now, even though after I was eventually hospitalized. After I put my son into daycare and I worked, I couldn't sustain that because I was a total workaholic. And my son, it turned out, was really high needs. He had ADHD, depression and anxiety, and he's a migraineur, like really bad migraines where he'd throw up for days. Horrible, just horrible. He's a real sensitive soul too. So is my husband, his dad. So I ended up hospitalized voluntarily. Like I knew I needed to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
And so I spent 2 weeks in the hospital and like 4 months in what they call partial hospitalization, which is like like doing a 9 to 5 job, but your job is going to group therapy all day. It's going to an outpatient part of the hospital. So I would do like occupational therapy, you know, yoga, you know what I mean? Like we were all together in this program where it was all about mental health recovery, recovering from, you know, whatever, being at that level where you need that. And so I did that for months until I was well enough to, you know, to go back to being, I didn't go back to work. I actually haven't gone back to work yet because work, I'm such a, my nature is to be a people pleaser and to overachieve and work really, really hard. And so it works better. I just didn't go back to work. I wasn't able to. Even going on job interviews or even interviews for disability, I start ramping.
Yeah.
So there's part of,
I think that's a normal thing, but what's happening with you is it's going way over the, like over the top with it. So
right. It's just we all are on a spectrum, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not like I'm a different type of human being.
Oh, but for you to want to go get the help, it was just happening at a more intense level than maybe what somebody else. Because I think that
yes,
all of those things that you're explaining, everybody has, right? But maybe not to the extremity where they're feeling like I'm not able to cope with what's going on here, because our thoughts then make a feeling, and then our body then feels the feeling of whatever we're thinking about. Of those, I think they say 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day that we have in the subconscious mind that we're not even aware of.
Right. Well, and that's the other thing is that I remember one psychiatrist saying, because what I wrote about, a lot of things that I wrote about are thoughts and stuff that a lot of people have, and it just sort of goes by. But that I'm more sensitive to it. And so it hits me, you know, so that like postpartum, some things that are very disturbing thoughts, other people might not even be aware of it, or it might just be so fleeting they aren't even aware of it. Whereas me, it's just like, whoa.
And you had the postpartum as well?
Yeah, I had like a little fleeting postpartum psychotic thoughts.
My sister and my daughter both had that, and it was not good. It wasn't good.
Yeah. Luckily, I mean, I was, you know, I took medication postpartum for depression because I was still diagnosed as depressed. And in fact, probably the pregnancy, I'm considered postpartum bipolar because I was still actually nursing when I was diagnosed. I had to wean my son when I was diagnosed bipolar because of the medication change. You can't nurse when you're taking those medications. So it's sort of within that period of time when it would still be considered postpartum because I still had those hormones going because I was still nursing my son, even though he was 2.5 years old, 27 months. So
the advocates, the natural women or whatever, they're like, nursing till the kid's 5 or, you know.
He really loved it. I mean, he loved it. If I could have continued to nurse, I would have. So I have a really poignant little story to tell about weaning him, because he had never, not nursed. Right. And so here we are. Even when I worked, when I'd come home, I would nurse him, nurse him to go to bed and, stuff like
Yeah.
that. So,
Mom and baby time. It's the best.
yeah. Yeah. So, we co-slept and stuff like that. So, it wasn't even that we necessarily had this, it was just what he wanted and needed. So we did what he needed, and, it wasn't that we necessarily believed there was one way to do it and not another way to do it in terms of parenting. We just sort of responded to our child's needs.
Yeah, I think that's I think that is naturally what we were supposed to be doing, but then we got into the society where different things and things are right and not right, and
right, exactly. It's just like just do what works for you.
Yeah.
So and so here I was, after I told you about the euphoric feelings of being
Yeah.
called to the hospital, and I mean, being before the hospital, being called to one church for Bible study, another church for spiritual direction, and being giving medication for bipolar and diagnosed bipolar. So I had to somehow wean my son. And so what I decided to do was to go to my parents for the weekend, and just be away, just like take the weekend and not have that demand on me, because I was having these symptoms and taking this new medication. So my son couldn't believe that I was leaving. So I got in the car and left, and my husband and son sat at the driveway, and my son was going to wait until I came back. And then they made their way up to the front porch, little by little,
Yeah.
and then to the front door, and then to the stairs, looking at the front door open, up the stairs, and then into the master bedroom, looking down at the door open, and into bed in the master bedroom until he fell asleep.
Oh,
Isn't that sweet? It's
yeah,
so sweet.
you know what? Yeah, you're his favorite person in the whole world, right?
Well, and my husband was that he did it that way, that he was so, thoughtful of him, In
That's
fact,
wonderful to hear that. Usually some men are like, get him out of our bed, and this is enough of this.
right. No, but he was
But he's not like
very
that at all.
sensitive. Yeah, very. In
Nice.
fact, they're out mountain biking right now, actually, in Bend, Oregon. So, but he was just that caring of a father and that sensitive of a father, that he didn't force him to go inside. He's like, okay, well, we'll wait for mom. How about if we wait for mom? It's raining. How about we wait for mom underneath the eave? How about if we wait for mom, here? How about if we wait for mom here? So until he fell asleep.
Well, you know
So,
what? I think that story is really important too, because he didn't push him to make him feel more uncomfortable against something that was already feeling like this is, so he wasn't traumatized probably at all by that situation,
right.
because of
No, I mean, the
he just
story to
followed
me
his
is,
lead.
yeah, the story is so sweet to me. I have another story that just shows what a great guy my husband is. When we were first dating, we met right after I had that psychotic episode, and I moved back in with my parents to try to get my, go recover enough to be able to go back to work, because my brain just wasn't working properly. And I went out on a date. Met my husband, and we went out on a date, and he said, "You're the most independent woman I've ever met." And I laughed. I'm like, I used to be a psychotherapist, and then I had a breakdown. I'm living with my parents, and you're saying I'm the most independent woman you ever met? He's like, no, really, you are. Like, he could see who I was, like, not my circumstances, not that I was having a crisis, not that,
That's huge. That's character right there, because most people, they can't handle it. They want to go with the crowd, right? Well, there's that. Yeah, I don't want to, that's huge. I love
it was
that.
huge. I mean, he still had fears. He had fears of me, because he had lost people. So he had a fear of losing me, because of my experience
That's different though.
but that was different. That wasn't the
He's loving you and supporting
yeah.
you. Different.
Yeah.
Love him.
Yeah. So he was pretty pretty awesome. So yeah, we've been together over 25 years. So I want to let people know that people with serious mental illnesses like bipolar disorder can have long-term committed loving relationships, and that they can parent well. Even though I thought that I was going to be a bad mom, it turned out that I was a good mom. So good that my 22-year-old regularly thanks me for how I raised him.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing
Isn't
that.
that sweet?
Yeah, there's so much of this that's going on in the world, and everybody is not talking about it. Instead, they are in silence and they are shaming and guilting themselves. And so that story that you just shared, Kitt, is, and especially to find a relationship where you've got somebody looking at who you are and supporting who you are and not what the circumstances. That's huge.
It is huge. I think that, in fact, I told that story to the president of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, which is NAMI, which is the U.S. mental health organization I volunteer for. And he said, to my husband, we were at a dinner thing, and he said, you realize that's a huge compliment your wife just gave you, that that
it's huge. I didn't, yeah, I didn't have that. Good for you. I mean, I love that. Yeah, somebody who didn't, to not. Yeah, I had I didn't have anybody that had my back. I had going through lots of trauma, 4 family deaths, and a concussion, really bad concussion to start with, 2 more to follow. It was the universe waking me up, kept falling on my head.
Oh, concussions! I'm so sorry,
That
and grief. That's just
something
horrible.
else. So, you know what, and I didn't get it treated because I was kind of getting we're in fights and hockey and they get their head slammed all the time. So you fell on your head, big deal. I couldn't get out of bed for days. I couldn't get in the brain, and then there was the skull. In between there, it was like if there was a movement or anything, it would be like clang, clang, clang. And it was wicked.
Oh,
It was wicked. And I couldn't see out of my eyes for the lights. I couldn't have the lights on them turned on. They were red. And it was just, but that's the nervous system, which I learned that the eyes, they're always in this fight or flight, and they dilate and they go before just even having the thought, they're already, anyways, I've really educated myself about all of that, because just going through all of that alone, right, with somebody
right.
that was not, no, I didn't have somebody that had my back. I had somebody who was judging me and just like, get over it.
That's horrible.
Right? It's time, get over it.
That's terrible. That's terrible, because a traumatic brain injury is life-threatening.
Oh, I'm lucky. Because my daughter was in a wheelchair in the house, and I jumped on a swing outside. I lit the barbecue, and it was a circular swing that my husband had fallen out of and retied a rope, but the base of it underneath this thing had come loose, which he probably didn't realize. So when I jumped up on the swing, my feet went flying up in the air, full motion, and head first into the cement. And I remember trying to stay too, because it was just my daughter in a wheelchair in the home, and I knew I couldn't. Right. So I was, but my other daughter, she's 24 now. She played hockey, and she had a bad concussion. She was in bed in the dark room for 2 weeks. I started to cry as soon as I had this experience, like at the beginning of it, because you have no idea. You don't know where the bottom is on that. And it is, I just felt sick because I just didn't know what she was going through. And it's quite something, because I know it's talked about more now, but and then having multiple deaths, my dad, my daughter, my sister, all, and then Kennedy, when the wheelchair, had a life-changing cerebral palsy, and she had a life-changing surgery that we were shamed for in Canada. Like, it was just this multiple, my other daughter's best friend drowned. Like, it just kept going, right? It was just ridiculous.
Oh my gosh, you went through a living hell.
I had judgment. It was.
How could people judge you when you've gone through so much?
Does that, right? And then telling me I was crazy and all. It was not. I'm grateful to be alive. I'm grateful to have gotten out. It's just, I listened to your story, and you know what? I know that that's a thing. And good for you for having it. Good for you, and good for you for sharing that is a possible thing, that somebody can actually hold a space of love, actual love for.
Yes, there's
Like,
such a thing as actual love. And not only that, it's like when you're going through all those things, not only do you need support from outside of yourself, but you need to overcome that internalized stigma and shame. When we take those judgments and we have them ourselves against ourselves, and
freezes you.
that's where it's horrible. It's just it's the worst hell to go through, is to feel that way. And I think it's really important that we come to a place of acceptance of ourselves as we are, because that's an act of self-love. It is a spiritual act of self-love. And I think it's essential for everybody.
How did you do this? Because I know that was, we talked about this just before the show. That was a big thing for me to come to the fact of accepting that this actually is, this is my life now. Right.
Right.
And how did you come to acceptance? Like, how does one in that come there? Like,
it wasn't an all at once thing. I think it's been a process. Yeah. And the process has deepened over time. So I have at 59, having lived with mental health issues since I was 18, we're talking decades.
Oh, come on.
So
you don't look like you're 59. This is seriously.
So I am. So so this looks 59. I got this neck. So I have the benefit of being able to look back over my life, so I have the benefit of that, and being able to see how my life has made sense, and to reframe what I've been through, struggles I've been through, and find meaning and purpose in them, which is what you do too with your podcast, right? That we take our struggles. I think that in taking your struggles, and accepting who you are and loving who you are, and using that to help others, or to share your story, just as simple as to share your story and be compassionate, and empathetic, that gives
empathy,
us purpose.
compassion. Those are some big words, right? Like, is that a thing? It is a thing.
Exactly.
But self-love, that's, I believe, why we're all here. I believe that we have this thought through our head, all of us, right? Like, who am I and why am I here? Our whole life, right? Like, what, in and out. I believe that. I mean, I remember kind of always having those thoughts, even from when I was younger, right? Like, who am I? Like, and you're kind of thinking, what kind of thought is that? But we don't know. We don't know mostly why what we're here, and how our connection is to this whole universe. We think we're the only one out in this universe, on this planet.
Right. So you may not know it in the moment why you're here or what your purpose is, but you are here for a reason, and you do have a purpose. And you can seek that purpose, and there are ways to do that. Actually, as I started, like right after I was hospitalized, I actually went to seminary, which is where you study to become a minister. I didn't actually finish it, but it became clearer and clearer in my writing and in my delving and in my prayer that I had a mental health ministry. So, and it became clear over the years that I also had a purpose in raising my son, because that he was a high needs son, and he needed me, and he needed me at home with him, so I really couldn't work.
You needed
so
him. You needed him, right? So here was this gift of this. We adopted, my daughter passed, and she left a 3-month-old, and we adopted her, and she's my Buddha. She was she made me smile every day. And she, we healed each other. It was just an incredible, like, so much. I was 52 when my daughter passed, and it was, and I wasn't good. I just lost my dad. My sister's dying of throat cancer. She's doing the Darth Vader breathing, having a tracheotomy the day that my daughter passed. And it was just intense. It was just like, there was all of this stuff going on that was just, it's funny how those snowballs are so big sometimes, right? But it's, I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah. Yeah. This self-love thing. That's what my whole journey has come back down to is, I didn't have any faith in anything. I did, but I didn't know who I was speaking to. I would just say universe. I never went to church. Wasn't taught about any religion. I knew about it, but was very uncomfortable with it because my parents didn't talk. I didn't know anything about I was totally ignorant. And when I'd go to a church I went to a Catholic church for a wedding and everybody's standing up. So I stood up, they were taking the bread. Yeah, I dropped it. And the whole church like, oh, I'm like, oh my God, right? Like, and then I was like, what are you doing? Like, you're not a Catholic. I'm like, I don't know. Everybody was up with, anyway, it was just like to make it even worse, right? I dropped the bread. Yeah, you don't do that, but I did. So, I was uncomfortable. So, Dark Night of the Soul was when I actually started this podcast. I didn't realize I was starting a podcast. I signed myself up for a broadcasting class and he was talking about it. If you're in this space. And I listened to him talk about this course that he was teaching. And at the very end of it, it was like, it just spoke to me. I signed up for it. And really, I didn't realize what I was signing up for. So it was a gift that came through for me. But on my knees, I was praying and I was gifted. I have been I know I've been so divinely protected on so many levels. It's ridiculous. I fell asleep driving in the car. I've never done that. All of a sudden my eyes are closing. And the second one, I couldn't keep them open. Boom. I wake up, I'm on top of a snowbank 4 feet up in the air, not down the side of the mountain, just up on the snowbank. And I opened up my roof because I was 5 minutes from where I needed to go. And I'm up on a snowbank and snow woke me up coming down. And I was like, oh, well, it was a good nap. I mean, nothing wasn't hurt, nothing, didn't even know what happened.
Wow.
I had so many of those incidents. So, and when I ask, I receive, and I know without a doubt that Jesus is a thing and he's not goofy and scary. It's like, when I ask for him, he's like my bud. I feel like he's like one of the gang. It's an interesting experience because I thought it was something different and that I had to be somebody else to have a relationship with God or Jesus. No, I don't. Not if in the churches, I think they separate and say, kind of have some rules there, but
right. I'm with you. I don't go to church because for some reason, it just doesn't work for me. It's overwhelming. But I definitely love the message of Jesus.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I love about Jesus is that he was the one and only perfect human being because he was God, and that we are not God. We are human and we are imperfect and we are loved as we are. We are loved.
they say that our soul, which is our consciousness, which is not our body, is all part of the divine. Like we're all a part of, right? And so that's how we're all kind of one and part of the. But
I totally feel like we're connected. But I mean, just in terms of the day to day, we make mistakes, we trip, we fall, and we're still connected. We're still part of this greater thing, right?
Yes.
And we're still loved. Okay.
Yes,
so you don't have to,
but we're not loving ourselves.
Right. So that's why we have to love ourselves, right? Because we're right. I mean, and it's not a selfish thing to do, to take care of yourself. And how do you
love yourself? Going for a massage is not loving yourself. It's going for a massage. It's not a lasting thing. It's like the massage is over and that's over. So any
quick thoughts? I think it's just don't give up, really, because I can't give you an easy answer on how to love yourself.
Yeah, it's like I found that I had to kind of drop within and I just breathe and breathe and open my heart with breath. I love that. Is kind of how I have helped myself.
That's how I pray, actually, is the opening of the heart. And
then the heart math, they have, where when I did this Dr. Joe advanced week-long course, heart math, and it's a huge thing that all of the scientists and doctors have implemented, and they do worldwide meditations where everybody goes on a heart math call, and it's breath, so it's heart brain coherence. And just through the breath, I believe it's like in for 5, like opening up for 5 and then releasing for 8. And it brings your body into like a beta state, like it takes you into a different, like it brings you right down into coherence, where all the miracle healings and stuff, that's our connection, I believe, to the divine, is in that space. That's what I've learned.
Cool.
But
That's cool.
but
I think it's just, I think that all the more and more, definitely in terms of science, are finding the meditation, which prayer is a form of meditation. Both of those things are very healing, and so I'm all for that. For people who have trouble meditating, which some people do, like my son,
I think a lot of
had
people do.
trouble just because of the way he is, the ADHD and stuff. He's like, it's just not, he wasn't able to do it. And also he used to get the breathing would, because he had vocal cord dysfunction, he would get anxious when focusing on breathing. He would like close up and stuff. So, because I took him to a hypnotherapist for a while to help him with his migraines. And he said, Mom, you don't know how hard this is for me. This is really hard. And I said, okay, if this is not helping you, I'm just trying to find things that help you, tools that help you. So if this is not helping you, then you don't have to do it. We'll try. So we'll just keep on.
Yeah, and so
keep on
that's the
trying.
thing, right? It's not one thing isn't for everybody, right?
Right.
Different things. And I think that's why I love talking to different people and having their input, because you know what, somebody is going to listen to what you're saying and go, okay, there's somebody out there who's experiencing what I've experienced. I'm not alone.
Right.
And then having some information, like when you're going through your thing, you didn't have anybody to talk to about it. You didn't have any information about it. Because that's not really a thing that people are talking about, right? You're going to the crazy house if you say that you think that the soul's eternal, or if you say anything like that.
Oh, right. That's the stuff like I actually, when I was going through the spiritual stuff when I was 21, my roommates were totally into it. I even had a friend who came and moved in with us because he was so fascinated, because we were undergraduates into that kind of a thing. So no, actually I've been pretty blessed in that I've had people I could talk to and share with. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for my friends that I had, that I actually told that I was suicidal when I was 18, and who, urged me to get help. And then when I actually had like a crisis in which I was about, getting ready to kill myself, I called a friend, one of those friends, and I said, I need someone to be with me right now. And I went to the resident assistant in the dorm and I said, I need to see a really good psychologist today. And so I was always pretty good at getting help and receiving help when I needed it. So I've been really blessed in having that gift of that ability to see that I needed help and to ask for it. There were times, yes, in which I was defensive. Like I remember once when I was in my 20s, my dad said, oh, it's too bad you couldn't just take a pill and feel better. And he was sort of saying it flippantly, but the reality was I was struggling with depression, and I probably could have benefited from antidepressants rather than going through
There's
this.
a stigma about it, and so there's no knowledge about it. There's just like a stigma a lot, right? And then everybody's on antidepressant, and so people are talking, then you feel like you failed, or you're not strong enough, or something else to shame ourselves about.
Right? I think my defensiveness in my 20s was that I was in what's called, I went to grad school, a psychodynamic grad school, and I was in, at that point in time, psychodynamic psychotherapy. So it's psychotherapy where you're looking at your family of origin. Basically, you're blaming your parents. So it wasn't the therapy I was in wasn't going like supportive of getting medication. It was more like doing the therapy forever, which I have been doing therapy forever, but that's just to help me cope, just to be supportive, right? And it got to, I did have to cope with those. I did have to deal with my issues, with my parents, because they were alcoholism and bipolar disorder and depression. They're all kind of related, they tie in together with people who are self-treating, their moods, their dysregulated moods. And so they do that with alcohol and drugs, my parents' alcohol. So I had a negative influence on me. Well, not just negative, actually. It's kind of, there are a lot of healers who come from alcoholic families. You do learn some skills. So there's some gifts too that come from it, actually, interestingly enough.
All these
And
are gifts is what I've learned. Like, I mean, when we hit bottom, it's like we're here for a purpose. Like,
yeah,
there's a reason, right? And then you get
right,
back up, and you need to be somebody to share how you got back up, so other people know when they're having that dark night, or
right,
that you know what, I know that I can get up because that person did.
right, right,
Same.
right, right. And that my family was pretty functional and loving. My parents loved us. So, everything's double-edged. Nobody's perfect. And I'm Irish. So what do you think? I mean, come on.
Well, and it's generational. From what I've learned is that so their parents probably had something going on, and then it just passed down, right? And so
Mhm.
Bruce Lipton, he's one of the Greg Braden and Bruce Lipton. He's another doctor, scientist, a lifelong work on this area, but they all kind of share it at differently. You really enjoy these guys. They're quite incredible. He explains that everything from the time we're 0 to, or even in the womb, to the time we're 5 or 7 years old, we then play out what happened in our family dynamic throughout our life. And so if we can kind of find and see when we're in a crappy situation, and how it feels like when I was younger, did I have this feeling? And if you can kind of go back and just have that peek in and drop into your childhood, which I was doing, and it's really powerful, because then they didn't get the help or have the awareness or the knowledge, right? But we're in a space where that's becoming available to us, to the veils lifting, so we can have a larger picture of what is actually going on with,
Right.
because we're not educated, and we're all ignorant to it.
And that it is helpful. It's very important to be able to, like you're talking about those intergenerational cycles, to be able to break the cycle.
Cellular, it's in the cells, right? So
It actually is. Scientifically, they've shown that it is. There's a thing called epigenesis. Yeah, totally. Where
you'll love these
traumas passed on generation to generation.
Yes, it is. Yeah. And then whatever's happening in you're in the womb, and whatever your mom's experiencing, if they're going through, not enough, or, struggling financially, like all of those things, we're experiencing all of those energies as, and take that on after 7, we then take that on as our foundation. Like that is our foundation that we move forward on. And so if you look at it that way, it makes sense to be able to release and understand it for me.
Right.
Just to kind of see, okay, so this person actually isn't a monster psycho devil. Like this is actually another pattern. Like I'm attracting this because I'm in that energy field of not, because I'm still not enough, or not loving myself because of situations from when we were 0 to 5, apparently. That's
right. So you are enough is this, you got to remember. Oh my gosh.
We all have it. We all have that. I don't know why we all have that, but it is a thing. Some of us have it worse.
It's interesting how you were talking about the early life, because it is very, very, it's basically scientific also that those years are very important for brain growth, very important for, the just extremely important years, those first years. And we have to remember that not only, traumas, do the adverse childhood experiences affect you, but positive things affect you too. Yeah. So like one of the positive things, and that one of the things that I think has benefited me in my lifetime is that I was what you would consider a third culture kid. I was raised in Saudi Arabia from the time I was 2 to 7. And so I was not of my parents' culture. because I wasn't living in the United States, and I was not of the Arab culture either, because I wasn't an Arab, and I wasn't, I was an American living in Arabia. So I was this, it's called a third culture kid. And basically when you're raised like that in your formative years, you develop the ability to have one foot in a system and one foot out. So you can bridge cultures, you can bridge things. And I think that's what enabled me to sort of step outside myself and observe that I was suicidal and needed help, or observe that I was manic and needed help.
That's huge. That's huge, because these thoughts that we're having, apparently it's like a computer chip that's in our head that's not real. Like what we're thinking about is things that we've perceived or that we think might happen or that did happen, that then we're coming in, that we've brought fear of into the future. Or like you're saying, there's all the good things too, right? And so thank God we have that, because then it balances and creates some good things coming for us as well.
And I think it's important for people to know that too, that even some of the negative experiences they've had have sides to them, which are gifts, in that we learn things from them.
All of them, I think, right? It's that
totally, we learn from everything we've been through. I'm not saying that it's a good thing that trauma happens. No. Nor that it was trauma, you were supposed to go through this trauma or whatever. I do think that it's good to go back over and find meaning and purpose and to reframe things, but it's not your fault, obviously, that you go through trauma. It's nobody's fault. It wasn't meant.
Huge. That's huge right there. It's not my fault.
Exactly.
That's another huge thing. I'm not enough. And as children, what we're experiencing around us, we're all taking in as, if our parents are struggling or we're taking it in as it's our fault, which is, you're thinking, so well, how could that be? Like but that's what's happening. And all of that's within our body that we don't even know.
Right. Like Jackie, even as an adult, you talked to me about all of this trauma you went through, like the multiple losses, the traumatic brain injury, none of those things were your fault. Right. But you had
lying feeling that they were, because my mom and dad's relationship, and this is what I've come to know, that this, looking back, that's where I came up with that piece, is that I perceived, and I totally, as soon as it landed, I knew exactly where I was, what had happened. And it's just interesting to, it then makes sense to me, for me to be able to wrap it up and release it.
Exactly. So what you're able to is not only process that early childhood experience and where it is like resonating, but you're able to, what you've done is you're able to take it and reframe and use it in a positive way to help heal others.
I think that what you're saying there, that's right there. We have to go in and re-perceive it, right? We need to go in and create a different story, because we're able to see that little child made it. We're good. Take our little child home with us and look at it from a perspective of an adult now and get around it.
That's what basically what my book was about, or what I did in writing my book, is that
name of the book
I wrote. It's called Balancing Act: Writing Through a Bipolar Life. And basically the writing through a bipolar life is that in the writing, you can rewrite your story. You can share not only can you share your story, but you can reframe it. You can rewrite it. You can take it and empower yourself.
Love that. And I think as well, I do a lot of writing as well. It gets it out of you. Like it's somewhere where you don't have to talk about it to somebody. You don't have to, but you can get it out, right? And kind of process it that way as well. Did you find that for yourself?
Yes, writing is therapeutic. It's known to be therapeutic. And when I worked as a therapist, I would give my verbal kids, my verbal girls, journals with lines, and my girls who weren't yet verbal, who for whatever reason didn't have the verbal skills, something that they could draw in, a journal with no lines.
Love that.
So they could draw.
Love that. Wow. So it's quite a journey. And to me, I think that you were probably given a bunch of gifts that you've not unraveled yet. So I think you need to watch these doctors and scientists. They're doctors and they're phenomenal. They're
Okay.
educated up the yin yang, and the three of them. I was supposed to go do a course in Maui with them, and COVID came and it got canceled. A week-long training with these three amigos, and there's not many things that I go in life and go, oh, I wish that I'm going to intend to have them do it again, so I get to go.
That sounds great.
But I'd love to hear what you think about if you have a look at them, because I think it's right up your avenue of how you like your education. I think that you will really, really, I think you'd really enjoy their information.
So we have Joe Dispenza, Greg Braden, Jeff?
Dispenza,
And Lipton.
Bruce Lipton. Greg Braden, he talks about all the global warming and stuff and how it's all secular. And he is the science that's coming out now about how old our world is and our genes. There's all of us, they're saying that we're here by design, that they've now proven that there's 2 links in our DNA that have been taken out, and it's the same in all of us. And we've got a different one put in, which is, it's just amazing information. And it's, it's interesting. So
interesting.
Yeah, I think that, I think that
I'll have to check them out.
I'd love to hear what you
they have to say. Yeah. I'll, and you said Dark Night of the Soul was one of the books?
No.
That's a different one.
Becoming Supernatural is Joe's. And he's teaching how the pineal gland is where our pharmacy is, that has been crystallized over. And so the breath work that he does to breathe and pull up from the perineum, and you go all the way up, and then you hold it at the top of your head here. And what that does is the pressure pops off the crystals off of the pineal gland, which looks like a little acorn. It's like a little acorn inside of the eye of Horus, that it looks like that's in our brain there. It's kind of right in the center, right? Your third eye.
This in the center. Okay.
But this is when I went to the Vatican, I was in Rome and we were doing the tours. Yeah, I go to a lookout spot, and here's a great big huge acorn. Like, this is known. They know, and we don't have access to it. This is a full pharmacy of natural things for our body that we need. And the breath work that they're doing and is taking the crystals off. They believe it's like it's been crystallized over with fluoride, like things like that, which have we've all kind of had here, whatever. So I'm not sure exactly if they know, but they are doctors or scientists. It's lifelong. They're really, really great. So have a look at them, because I
will check it out.
Yeah.
I'll check it out.
So on this last note, is there anything else that we want to share about health, brain health?
I'm going to just go back to the theme that you are enough, that you are loved. Okay. And that acceptance is essentially a spiritual thing and it's spiritual because it involves self-love. And self-love is powerful. Love yourself as you are. I talked some about, the beauty of imperfection, or, I know you were talking about that we're part of the divine, but to the extent that we break and are put back together, we're like that Japanese, I've got to remember this name because I keep on making this metaphor. There's this Japanese pottery where they break the pottery and they put it back together with gold for all the seams.
Oh.
And that the remade pottery, after it's broken and put back together, is more beautiful than the original pottery. So that you, broken and put back together, are more beautiful than you were before.
Yeah. And I think when we come down and we crash and our tower crashes and we're shattered all over the place and we have to pick up those little heart pieces and put them back together, we do come out the other end bigger and brighter. And I know I'm just coming back up and out, and I was in there for a while, and
right.
And I couldn't get out, even with all the tools and the knowledge, and it just it was a long haul. But it
can be a long haul. And so I'm not saying when you're in that crisis or you're falling apart that I'm not saying, oh, you're more beautiful now. But when you come through it, You
It-
will
and
come through it.
that is
Don't
so
give up.
true. I believe that that is so true. And I like, I don't know that what really we're here for exactly, except for to learn to love ourselves. That's all I've come up with, to love another, but I do know that coming through some big things in my life that get after you get back up, just dust yourself off and can get going again. You do, you're expanded, you're more rounded, you are more compassionate and empathetic, and you're
Yes.
yeah, you just get it on a different level.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're not only able to love yourself, but I think that and love others, but able to accept that love.
Acceptance. Yeah, it's a big one. It's big. Accepting that you're enough.
Accepting that you're enough and accepting that you're loved.
And love. Yeah, I am love and I am loved, right?
Oh, I am love. I love that. Yes. 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 Because that's basically what it's all about.
It was a great visit, great chatting with you. I'd love to chat with you again down the road. I would love for you to get a taste of what those books are, because I think that you're going to really, really enjoy those doctors and scientists, because I think they're right up your alley. I think they might fill in some gaps for you.
Okay. Thank you, Jackie. I'll have to check them out.
Yeah, they're gifts. They are definite gifts. Okay. Have a good rest of your day.
Okay. Thanks, Jackie.
Day.
Okay. Bye-bye.